Welcome to Still Serving, the VFW Podcast, the official podcast of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And now, from the VFW Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., here's your host, Rob Couture.
And welcome to Still Serving. I'm your host, Rob Couture. Let's go with roll call. Sitting right here in the studio with me is Mike Figlioli, the Director of National Veteran Service, Christina Keenan, the Director of National Legislative Service, and our Executive Director, Ryan Gallucci, here with his mug, Rhode Island. I guess you're representing Rhode Island today?
The University of Rhode Island.
The University of Rhode Island. And joining us, speaking of Rhode Island, joining us from Rhode Island is our friend, my co-host, Brittany Dymond Murray. Brittany, there
Hi.
you are.
I am here.
Yes. Well, welcome back. How's things going for you?
They're going quite well, settling in here in Rhode Island.
Yes. So for those that are kind of wondering what's going on. So yes, Brittany is back in a virtual capacity, in which she's going to be co-hosting with us virtually and being here and coming into the VFW when we need her. Just that's a different setup, but it's awesome. I'm really excited for the way going forward. In fact, now I figured out some things in the board, and I can do picture-in-picture. As you could see, there's Brittany on the screen with me. I guess only Mike can see because he's right next to me. And we're going to go to large shot. There she is. So now we're all in the room. We have everybody here. I'd turn the screen, but, you just kind of imagine that she's kind of sitting right below you.
I feel like I'm there.
So if you do this, Ryan, she's like right below you. So in the screen.
Like in the Brady Bunch?
Kind of like in the Brady Bunch. Okay, so there's our roll call. Let's go forward with some of the things we have planned. I'm going to throw it over to our Executive Director, Ryan Gallucci, who kind of has an idea of the things that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Yep.
I brought the whiteboard with me.
All right.
We got a few things on the agenda for today. I mean, we're gonna talk about Memorial Day. It's a big day for the VFW, a big day here in Washington, D.C. for our team and our staff and the posts in the area. We're going to give you a quick recap of everything that we did. We're going to talk about the Major Richard Starr Act. I think Brittany's going to walk us through this one. I think she has some strong feelings on this piece of legislation. Of course, Christina and our team participated in a press conference on it very recently. Mike was out at the Grand Ole Opry with our partners from Humana as part of their Salute to Service. Always grateful for the support they give our service officers. We're going to talk about hunting sharks. There have been some developments. Those of you who watch the podcast or follow the VFW have probably seen a little bit about them. I'm not going to spoil it, though, because this is really exciting. We're going to talk about the Military Transition Assistance Program. We're going to talk a little bit about politics.
Yeah.
TAP has been one of the top priorities for the VFW. Mike's team manages a program on dozens of military installations. Brittany's testified on it. I've testified on it. Christina's testified on it. I think Mike's testified on it if you go back far enough. But it's been a top priority. We're going to talk about some developments there. And then, of course, we're grateful to have Brittany back. And then good of the order.
Yeah.
I think we'll have some good stuff to talk about
I think
today.
a good of the order is definitely going to be interesting because we have a few things we're going to talk about as far as good of the order goes that are a little bit outside of the norm of what we do here in the podcast. But I say let's go ahead and kick it off with a little bit of a recap of Memorial Day. So we had a lot of events going on during Memorial Day. As Ryan was saying, we here for the VFW Washington Office, we annually, every single year, that's what annual means, we always bring in our National Commander and some of the chair officers even sometimes. And this time it was our National Commander, Al Lipphardt, and his wife and his chief of staff and his wife who came down and we visited Arlington. Ryan, talk us a little bit through on what we did there, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Look, Arlington National Cemetery is really the centerpiece of Memorial Day here in Washington, D.C. We also have the war memorials where we honor those who lost their lives defending our country. And the VFW looks to play a key role in all of these. But this was, I think, especially important to Commander-in-Chief Al Lipphardt for a variety of reasons. And I want to talk about two of those specifically. So we did participate, or we joined the ceremony, the National Memorial Day ceremony at Arlington Cemetery at the amphitheater, where the Secretary of Defense, the Vice President, and the President all spoke.
Right.
And
the Chairman of the Joint
and the
Chiefs.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Thank you. Yes, all spoke, honoring the sacrifices of our families of the fallen, the men and women who gave their lives in defense of our nation. But that was just a small part of what we did there. Of course, the Commander-in-Chief and his Chief of Staff and their spouses, they laid a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns. But again, that's all fairly routine for the VFW. Not to take away from it, but what I want to say was very important for Al and was very powerful to be a part of this year was first visiting the graves of our past Commanders-in-Chief who were buried at Arlington Cemetery.
Right.
Now, there are 5 past Commanders-in-Chief.
That's right.
Whose final resting place is Arlington. Bernard Kearney, Lloyd Brett, Richard Raudebush, James Van Zant, and then most recently John Gwizdak from the great state of Georgia, same state that Al is from.
Yeah, actually, he was interred not too long ago, right?
That's
4 years ago or so, 3 years ago.
Yes.
No, yes. Mike's shaking his head no. He's like, he doesn't. But it was around that time.
But John Gwizdak, he was Commander-in-Chief from 2000, 2001, a
Right.
close friend of Al's. I think actually everyone at this table knew John.
Very well.
John would tell us stories about National Veteran Service and instituting testing, reinstituting testing. I know they did it back in the day, somehow got away from it, but really working to professionalize our Service Officer Corps. So it was really powerful. Rob, you were there with us to walk down the hill to visit Chief Gwizdak's grave and to honor him.
It was. And, we had 2 of our, we had Brad and we had Chris, our Director of Operations, Brad Hazel, and a Deputy Director for NVS, Chris Masinkowitz, who had gone over beforehand and laid flowers arrangements, if you will,
Yes.
at the other 4 Commanders-in-Chief. They did that on Friday.
Yes.
This is something that we've done for a long time, even before past Commander-in-Chief Gwizdak had been laid to rest there. Mike, I think at one time that you were laying arrangements, former Director of Operations, Bob Jackson, thank you. He had done that before. So I think it's a great tradition and something that we do in honoring the legacy and keeping the memory of those that have gone before us alive. But Al wanted to do it. He wanted to do he wanted to do past Commander-in-Chief Gwizdak's grave separately. So when we went to Arlington and we got on a bus there at Fort Myer Henderson Hall, and that was where everybody was getting on, and we kind of get cleared to go through there, and you bring on, and then we're like, okay, well, how do we get there from here, right?
It was not close to the amphitheater.
It was not close at all to the amphitheater, and thankfully, Brad and Chris beforehand had sent us a pin on the phone to be able to be able to identify where it is, and so then we began the track down, and we got stopped by one of the police officers there for maybe a few minutes while he checked everything. So we continued on. But boy, I tell you what, it was easier going downhill than it was going back up. Well, at least it was for us. Al may have been difficult both ways, but he was a true trooper, that's for sure.
That's true. And there's something really powerful about that, just the trek to honor one of our fallen comrades, and take the time to do it right and to do it properly. I mean, the chiefs who were interred at Arlington, John Gwizdak joins the ranks. Lloyd Brett, who was our chief in 1919, he earned the Medal of Honor in the Indian Wars and then served in World War I.
Wow.
Richard Raudebush was he served as our commander-in-chief from 1957-58, went on to serve as a member of Congress and then the administrator of the Veterans Administration.
Wow.
Under the Carter administration. Bernard Kearney was he was a World War I and World War II veteran who went on to serve in Congress, is kind of a trend here. And then last but not least, I wanted to talk about him last, James Van Zant served as our chief for 3 years, 1934 to 1936. Also went on to become a congressman, but as we've looked back at our history post-World War I and times of, the Economy Act and cutting veterans' benefits and and things like that. Jimmy Van Zandt and Smedley Butler really led the charge to build the VFW into what we all think of it as today. At least that's my opinion. But I've got the information, the facts to back it up from Foreign Service Magazine.
That's right. And we have the volume sitting upstairs with all the articles that we've looked at.
Frequently, ever since Christina coined honor the contract.
Yes, right.
But really, these past chiefs, I think it's really important that we continue to honor their legacy and what they've built for us to be able to advance here in Washington and around the country, around the world as we advocate for veterans.
Yes. So after we had gone down and laid the arrangements there at Past Commander in Chief Gwizdak's gravesite, and we found that we did a solemn salute. And then when we went back, we got caught up by the police again, and like, where are you guys coming from? And I'm like, we just saw you, dude. And like, sorry, man, but
jump the wall.
Yeah, I don't understand.
We're the same people you saw 5 minutes ago.
I know. So we went back up and finally made our way to the amphitheater. It was a long wait, as it typically is. It seems like the president, no matter who the president is, is always like 40 minutes late. And it doesn't start. The party doesn't start until the president shows up. That's
well, I
the
mean,
way it
they
goes,
say
right?
that the ceremony starts at 11. This happens every single year. Again,
Yeah.
So the official party arrives about 11, but then the official party, the pomp and circumstance of the greetings from the SecDef and the greetings from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and then the president lays a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns, and then there's a 21-gun salute, and then the ceremony kicks off.
Right, and then it begins. So then it
Yes.
shows up. All the speeches given, a lot of some shout outs. And, there was a lot of recognition of Gold Star families. Just about everybody did. That was wonderful, I thought.
Yes.
From the chairman all the way up to the president, acknowledging those in the audience whose family member had given the ultimate sacrifice and is laid there at Arlington or, happened to be at a national cemetery somewhere. So very, very great ceremony. It was really nice. After that, then we went to go lay a wreath. It was Al and Jeff that went to go lay a wreath there, and that was after everybody was gone. So you have to kind of wait, and there's more lines. And for people that have never
And I had
experienced
to go back
that,
to Fort Meyer and bring the truck around to
yeah.
the bottom of the
That's
entrance.
Yeah, you had to leave early to go get it. It was quite an
Logistics,
ordeal.
semper gumby.
Yeah,
But
right.
and then after that, one of the reasons it was powerful to be there with Al is Memorial Day is very important to him, and that's because of his service in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Was really grateful to the Vietnam Memorial Commission for allowing the VFW to lay our wreath at panel 30E, which is where the soldiers that Al was with when they lost their lives in Vietnam, that's where they're memorialized.
Yeah.
So we were able to not only place the VFW's wreath in a special location for this year for our Commander-in-Chief, but then also he was able to visit the wall and pay respects alongside his VFW comrades. And Mike, kudos to you and your team for working all of those logistics out and making sure that we were able to get there. Because again, with the ceremony at Arlington and the logistics, getting in and out, we arrived later at the Vietnam Memorial than I think we wanted to.
Sure.
But of course, Mike and his team were on hand to make sure that this was a powerful experience for the chief, and that we gave it the reverence that the soldiers that he lost deserve.
It was really something to see, because we've been involved at the wall for a number of years now.
Right.
And I've been at that ceremony with that wreath laying in one capacity or the other. First time we've ever taken the wreath and put it somewhere of significance. And it was just really to see Al there, to look and wanting to touch their names, and life is life, right? They're all on one panel, which is which was beneficial for what he wanted to do, I guess. But still a reminder of what the chief did in Vietnam and what he remembers, because as you know, you hear him mention their names all the time.
We do.
He brought it up in his opening speech, in his acceptance speech, in his vision for the VFW last year.
In the joint hearing before Congress, he mentioned the names as well.
Yep. So that was it was a powerful moment, and I really want to thank the team for getting that done, but also Jim from Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation, who did announce from the podium that we were specifically placing the wreath at panel 30E.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
That's really if you think about it, as Al may be our very last commander-in-chief that's from the Vietnam War, that's historic. they were part of history there within the VFW. To have a national commander be part of that event on Memorial Day, and we may never have another Vietnam at that memorial. To have it that significant for the last commander-in-chief that's a Vietnam veteran, have it placed there, you hit it spot on, Mike.
And there were also, not to take up more time, but there were a bunch of refugees who had come from Hanoi, who were airlifted back in 72, 73.
Yeah.
And as Al made his way from the vehicle to the wreath, we took a couple pictures. They were just walking out in front of him just to shake his hand, just to talk to him.
Yeah. It was a lady from Vietnam and her kids, right? Yeah.
And there were several other ones that wanted to do it.
That's
and
cool
other
that
people
they came.
by.
That's cool that they came, and then they saw him and wanted to meet him.
Yep, got some good pictures, but he took the time with everybody, and it was something special.
I think so. And so anyway, that was our Memorial Day. It was pretty busy. It was very meaningful. And of course, I'm always honored to be a part of it. And we at the Washington office are always so proud to be able to put on our best for our chair officers and for the organization represent well. And thankfully the rain held up. Well, it didn't necessarily, because it was a little bit at the amphitheater it rained, but it's not like in years past. Remember, there was a picture that was taken, I took rather, years ago. I think it was when past Commander-in-Chief Tim Borland was there. And Mike was, and it
was pouring.
in suits, soaking wet.
Yes,
soaking.
wearing a light tan suit on a rainy day. It was good.
You never know what the weather's going to be like here.
Never know, right? Never know.
All right, and then thankfully, post 3150 waited for us, and they had some food.
Yeah, they sure. Oh, that's right. We did. There was a little bit of camaraderie that happened afterwards.
Yep, to visit with them.
Yeah, that was really good. Impressed with their post, actually. Didn't know it was an old church, and I was like, oh, this is neat. I never thought in a neighborhood like that you would even have a church, because it's so like. It seems like it's very city-like, and everything's kind of crammed in there. I've obviously not been to as many posts as like Mike and Christina and Ryan have, but that one was unique. It was a unique experience. Did you get along with the folks there? Obviously,
I did. Been there before. We used to.
Yeah, it's
go
my
there
post.
Afterwards,
Technically.
I bought my annual round of drinks for everybody, and we saluted everybody that gave the last full measure of devotion. But I want to just give them another shout out, not only for hosting the chief and everybody, but that post is a good example of accepting younger current VFW members.
Oh yeah.
Right. There are older members that have been there, VFW Korea, Desert Storm. They all work together. Great example of a successful post.
Yeah, that's really good. Good example for other people to model. All right, so here we are, moving on. I think that we need to go and give this time that's due to the Major Richard Starr Act. So before I throw it over to Brittany, I'd like Ryan and Christina to kind of set this up, because you two have been there at its beginning, right, so to speak, and can really speak to how it began and where we are. And then I'd like to go to Brittany to talk about the press conference and where we are now with where people are with the online, and there's some other things she wants to talk about. So, Christina, go ahead.
Right. So the Major Richard Starr Act touches on one of our legislative priorities, which is trying to achieve concurrent receipt. So there's been an ongoing issue where we've been trying to chip away at it over the years, where DoD retirement benefits and VA disability benefits have had an offset to a certain degree, and that is purely for cost savings. There really is nothing just about any kind of offset of these two very separate benefits, which come from different, one from DoD, one from VA. If you serve 20 years or more in the military, you can receive a DoD retirement. If you then become injured during that period of time, this is a whole separate benefit for VA to compensate you for your disabilities. And so we've been able to achieve over the years a reduction of that offset for anyone with a VA disability of 50% or more. But for people with less than 50%, there's still this completely unjust offset. And so while we support trying to reduce that completely and totally eliminate that offset, we are, through this legislation, trying to focus on Chapter 61 combat injured veterans and try to chip away again at the issue and see how far we can get. before we
Yeah.
try to do it all.
Right.
And then that's another, like, it gets very nuanced because that 50% or higher disability allowing you to collect both, that only kicks in for longevity retirees. And so what we're focusing on with the Major Richard Starr Act is medical retirees who were wounded in combat.
Right.
1 year, 20 years, doesn't matter.
Yes. Yep. And I mean, if we can't provide this for people who literally shed blood in defense of our nation, then what are we really doing?
Right.
And the dilemma is that it keeps coming up in Congress. We keep pushing for it, and it can't even get the light of day. Now, you have enough people who sign on as co-sponsors to support it, but look, I'm going down a tangent. I know Brittany wants to talk about some of this
definitely.
too. So.
I definitely want to hand it over to Brittany because Brittany, you were there. I was not there for the press conference that we had in the lobby, and you were. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm getting my press conferences confused. Sorry, but it's the one that you were at where Pat was at. So I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that press conference, what transpired there, and just some of the things you've been talking about with me and with Ryan and whatnot, and your concerns of where people's opinion is online.
Yeah, so there's a lot to talk about, and Christina and Ryan hit on a lot of it. It's a shame that we're still having this conversation. There hasn't been meaningful change to concurrent receipt since like 2004, and I mean there was a small improvement for survivors, for widows, in I think 2019 or so. Somebody please correct me if I'm wrong on that year. That was the widows tax repeal, but it helps such a tiny amount of folks relative to those who are impacted by the denial of full concurrent receipt benefits. So, as Ryan mentioned, the STAR Act is aimed at folks who were medically retired before serving that magic 20 years, and so they were not given the option to retire. Their careers were cut short through no fault of their own, through combat injury. So the Richard Starr Act would help only those people who were retired before they hit that magic 20-year mark and are receiving, like Christina mentioned, they're Chapter 61 medical retirees and are receiving something called combat-related special compensation, or CRSC. So that's about 54,000-ish veterans who are impacted by this. And so that's who we saw at this press conference are, again, we had to revisit, people had to rehash their stories, including our previous National Legislative Service Director, Pat Murray, telling his story among other veterans from the Wounded Warrior Project, for example. It was organized by the Wounded Warrior Project, and VFW and WWP have worked closely for years on this issue. In fact, the STAR Act is a product of VFW and Wounded Warrior Project advocacy. So, unfortunately, this most recent press conference, it was right before Memorial Day weekend. I believe it was on the 21st, Wednesday, the 21st of May, and like I said, it was an unfortunate. It was really unfortunate that so many veterans had to come together again on Capitol Hill to advocate for their earned benefits, the benefits that they are rightly entitled to, their full retirement pay and their full disability compensation from the VA. And so Ryan mentioned there's an overwhelming amount of support. This bill has no lack of co-sponsors in either the House or Senate. But one thing that I really felt like we really needed to address this issue of concurrent receipt is, and the STAR Act specifically, is because there seems to be confusion about, just from what I've been reading online, this used to be in my portfolio before I came over to work in communications with Rob. And there's been a lot of confusion about who this bill would help and who it wouldn't. But just general overarching, support in the House and Senate and administration for, who's actually going to get this done. And whether VFW is indeed at the forefront of advocating for the Major Richard Starr Act. Because I've seen chatter all over the place over the years about, well, the VFW is not doing enough to pass this bill. It's like, it's our bill.
Yeah, it was our idea.
It's like we're doing everything we can to get this passed. And really, it's a gatekeeper issue. And the gatekeepers are the those who are in charge of the House and Senate at any given time, whichever Congress happens to have control of each chamber, and the administration that's in office. And the reality is, Congress after Congress, administration after administration, regardless of which side of the aisle they fall on, they have failed to do anything about this for the past 2 decades. And so this is not a partisan issue, and it is not it's not an administration issue. It's a veteran issue, and if we want to get this done as veterans, we have to do it together, because that's the only way it's going to get done. And we just need to continue advocating to the people who are in positions of power to bring this bill to the floor, and that's what we're not getting right now. So that was the purpose of this press conference. We're in a brand new Congress again, and the intent is to get this bill through every year. We try to get it through in what's called the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, which is the DoD spending bill every year. So that's the ideal route to get this through. And so that was the purpose of this press conference, because the NDAA is being formed right now. It's the springtime, like late winter or springtime, is when the NDAA is coming together as a draft. Before it eventually, before the House and Senate eventually bring their versions together and deconflict and coalesce around an agreed bill. So that was the purpose of the press conference. The goal is to get it into that bill so that we can finally get some relief for the veterans who would benefit from the Major Richard Starr Act. And another one of the misconceptions is how much this bill would cost. The CBO score, we've long been talking about it, is inflated, because a lot of the a lot of the veterans this bill would help would not take a retirement because it wouldn't make sense for them. So, and what I mean by that is the Major Richard Starr Act would give people a choice. So the 54,000 some odd veterans who would fall under the Major Richard Starr Act, it would simply give them a choice to continue receiving the CRSC that I mentioned before, combat-related special compensation, or take their retirement pay that they would have been entitled to had they not been impacted by this concurrent receipt issue. So it would give them a choice. And so that means they would not get both. That's a big misconception. So that's been a concern of some lawmakers. And also the CBO score is inflated because it assumes that every veteran, all 54,000 some odd veterans, would take their retirement pay that they would have been entitled to at the time they got out of service, that they were medically discharged, and that is not true.
Which is bizarre. I mean, a lot of them, when you think of combat wounds, many times, unfortunately, it skews toward more junior service members. And
exactly.
For many of them, CRSC is going to be the more lucrative benefit.
Exactly. That is exactly, and it was. I mean, this bill was is named after Major Richard Starr, who unfortunately passed away. He was near. He was really close to being able to retire from a longevity perspective. So his, the magic 20-year number, and so he would have really benefited from receiving his full retirement pay that he would have. And when I say full, we need to be very careful about what we mean by full, and when I say that, we mean full retirement pay that they would have earned at that exact moment that they were medically retired. So if that was 18 years in one day, that would have been 18 years in one day of whatever retirement pay they would have accrued at that moment. They wouldn't just be fast-tracked to a full 20-year retirement. So for Major Richard Starr, it would have made a lot more sense for him to take that, for example, I don't remember exactly how many years and how many days he served, but if he served 18 years, it would have been more advantageous for him to take that 18-year retirement pay than probably his combat-related special compensation. But as Ryan mentioned, most of the people this impacts were junior enlisted people on the front lines who, for example, were, unfortunately impacted by improvised explosive devices, for example. And they weren't in service long enough to have accrued a substantial retirement retirement pay amount. So the cost is not what it seems in the official CBO estimate. I know there's an unofficial one floating around out there that is lower. And so just circling back, just want to emphasize that VFW is at the forefront of this. And like I said, it's our bill. And so in Wounded Warrior Project, we work together on this. We're in communication regularly on how to get it done. And we do advocate for it every year in our chief's testimony. So between that advocacy every March and our ongoing advocacy throughout the year, this is absolutely not lost on the VFW. It's something that is very much at the forefront of our priorities. And so I just wanted to just take some time to, explain the nuances and just reiterate that, we're trying to get this done, but this is a big veterans issue. And if it's going to get done, we all need to come together to make it happen.
And I'll add to that too, because the VFW, as the frustration has grown on this topic, we've gotten a lot more flippant about what we want to see with the Major Richard Starr Act. So first of all, I remember at the start of the Biden administration, we reset and said, no, we're going after full concurrent receipt again because this is outrageous. Brittany, like you said, that was something, I think it was the NDAA of 2004 that it was supposed to start phasing in full concurrent receipt, never got there. And so we started to say, hey, look, this is unreasonable. We want it all. But then over the last, year and a half, when we came to Washington, D.C. during past Commander-in-Chief Dwayne Sarmiento's year, there was a Starr Act press conference. Then Junior Vice Designee Tim Peters spoke, and his remarks were a little bit flippant, basically saying, well, we have lots of supporters. We need this to come to the floor. We need a vote. We need Congress to vote on it. We're out here. We amassed hundreds of VFW advocates behind the senators who spoke, and then now Junior Vice Commander-in-Chief Tim Peters, to basically say, we're behind you. Can you do something about it? Then when there was a funding bill for Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, and Congress chose to also pass their ban for TikTok. And a lot of times we're told, no, we can't do that through other mechanisms because that's not proper. That's not the way that Congress works. You don't understand. Well, we took the opportunity then when in Commander-in-Chief Dwayne Sarmiento's statement to basically say, well, TikTok's not related to Ukraine, Israel. Maybe you could consider taking up the Major Richard Starr Act because that's a national defense issue as well. And then the VFW's comments just last week when Pat Murray spoke again were basically, hey, look, DoD and VA have found all of these efficiencies to the Department of Government Efficiency, and we want to spend it on our warfighters. We have a group of warfighters here. It seems we have found the money. Yeah. So what excuse are you going to throw at it now? And I agree with you, Brittany. This issue is always on our lips. It was an idea that was concocted, by Pat Murray and Jose Ramos, who's the executive director of the Wounded Warrior Project, and also an amputee, to really care for the men and women that they served with. And so it's going to continue to be at the forefront of our issues until it gets done. The challenge that we run into here in D.C. is when you say something for long enough, it starts to become noise, and it's hard to get the attention across the street. That's what. Look, I appreciate the different tone we've tried to take on it, whether it was Tim Peters saying, well, we're here, where are you? Whether it's Dwayne Sarmiento saying, well, it looks like you can do unrelated things at the same time, or Pat saying, it looks like we found the money. So let's stop with the excuses. We're here.
Right. And I'll just add that every year, if not twice a year, our national VFW National Legislative Committee has brought this to just about every single member of Congress. So it's not like they haven't been told this directly from VFW members. So we're not slowing down on this. We're going to continue with it. It is and continues to be one of our top priorities. And we're focusing on leadership and letting leadership know they need to put this to a vote. And let's, even if it's a unanimous consent vote, put it on the floor so we can see some movement on this and see where it will go.
I need to ask this question because, you go and have a lot of closed door meetings on, across the street at the offices there at the Senate and the House. What's the holdup? Why is it that they don't just give you, yes, we're going to get behind this bill? They always say money, or is it just strictly political that they're kind of waiting to see what the president's going to say, whoever the president may be, or what is it?
It's not. It doesn't appear to be political. It's not being politicized at the moment. It is a cost issue, and for us that is not an excuse. It just cannot be when these are earned benefits. We're talking about veterans with disabilities and even some of the severely injured folks that have combat injuries. For us, this makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But cost is a reality in Congress, and some will say that and some will just hesitate. But that seems to be the sticking point for the moment.
Oh, and I forgot one. When so there was a Social Security reform that was passed at the end of the last Congress about the offset for public servants like firefighters, things like that, from their state pensions and things like that. We also put out a statement then that said basically, hey, this was an unjust offset that Congress was able to address. How about you take another look at the Major Richard Starr Act? So, I mean, we're locked and loaded with plenty of ammo and plenty of momentum from our members. I mean, we usually do, I'd say probably 2 action alerts a year where we have VFW advocates send messages to their legislators. Mm-hmm. Those are usually very well circulated.
Right.
And so it really is going to take Congress acting.
Right.
That's, if you want to elect us to Congress, we'll vote on it. I don't know.
Yeah. So let me go to you, Brittany, because this, sure. I mean, if you don't mind sharing it, because it affects you personally in your family, because, we know that Pat is an amputee and he doesn't get, I don't think he gets, it's like one of those things where he probably had to choose one or the other. And so that's the reason why you're so passionate about it. Am I correct?
It absolutely is one of the reasons. It does affect Pat. He's one of the ones that I described who would stick with combat related special compensation because his earned retirement pay would just not be advantageous. There's another factor, and this is part of the challenge, right? So this is the CBO score is inflated too. It doesn't take into account personal choice that each veteran who's impacted would take because everyone's situation is unique.
Right.
Retirement pay is taxable. CRSE is not. So for them to make a decision, if this bill were to pass, they would all have to decide, okay, is my earned retirement pay taxed? And if so, is that sum going to be more advantageous to me than what my CRSC currently is? Okay. So it's a very individual choice, and we cannot know what choice everybody will make. And so that's another reason why the cost of the bill that the CBO has officially published is just not, it's not realistic. So, and what I mean by that is too high. And so, for me, yes, Pat is affected. He would most definitely opt to maintain his status quo, which is receiving CRSD. But another reason why I'm passionate about this is because concurrent receipt is a lot bigger. This is actually, it's a really big problem. And I think many people don't realize how far reaching it is. So I was medically separated from the Navy, not retired. And that's an important distinction. So I was separated and I received separation pay. And, I didn't ask for the separation pay. It was just given to me. And then I got out of the Navy and I got a letter and it said, hey, we're taking your disability pay until you pay back your separation pay that the DoD gave you. And it was like $30-some thousand. And I was like, are you kidding me? You gave me this money and now you're penalizing me. Sorry, DoD gave me this money because I was unexpectedly separated. My contract was unexpectedly ended for a medical reason. You give me this money to help me get on my feet due to this unexpected separation. It comes out of DoD's pocket, and then the VA sends me a letter and says, hey, we have to dock your disability compensation until we recoup that $30,000+ but it's like, you're two different entities. These are two completely different benefits.
And correct me
What
if I'm
do
wrong,
mean
you get
you're
hit on the
taking my
taxes
pay?
on that too. So the VA's recouping 30,000, but you were taxed on the 30,000
I
that
was.
the Navy gave you.
Exactly.
Let's put
So
that
this
in
is
context
Yeah.
from the benefit side. If you're not, and I fortunately guess is not the proper word, but if you're not injured enough to be 80, 90, 100%, and your disability is 10%, and you owe $30,000,
you're not getting it.
it's going to 20 years before you see a dime.
Right.
Right.
That's crazy.
In addition to the other things that you've all explained.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, we're going to go down a rabbit hole, but I like this
It
rabbit
is.
hole because, it also invites the other question. We have service officers serve more than 20, they're on 20 plus installations, serve way more than that through virtual assistants, hub and spokes, things like that. We touch about 10% or we file claims on behalf of about 10% of those who get out of the military every year.
Yep.
And, just something I've casually observed, and Mike, you've been a BDD rep, because concurrent receipt kicks in at that 50%, it incentivizes people chasing higher ratings. And when you look
That's
at
an
things
excellent
like
point,
the
Ryan.
claim shark issue, when you look
Segue.
at things like state and municipal benefits that are disproportionately weighted to higher disability ratings, I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, we always trained in NVS, and we still train in NVS, that we help veterans receive what they're entitled to under the law, the maximum benefit that you're entitled to under the law. And there's a very fine line when it starts to become chasing a benefit you may or may not deserve. We've all run into it. Out of the limited number of beneficiaries that I've helped with their claims, it happens. And it's frustrating as hell. And it at times can give a bad reputation to accredited VSOs that are held to high legal standards. I mean, you look at the marketing for claim sharks, and they talk about get the benefits you deserve, maximize. And they actively solicit for veterans who aren't rated at 100%, almost implying, well, you deserve 100% disability. Well,
These offsets make people want more than what their disability is already rated at because they're losing out. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And these are folks that are leaving the military with disabilities, and they may be single, they may have spouses and dependents, and all this impacts their transition out of the military and how successful they're going to be. And losing out on that is adding fuel to the fire of chasing higher benefits.
Well, I would say this is probably a natural transition to claim sharks that we absolutely need to talk about because, the interesting thing is that there was a story that came out, what is it, 2 weeks ago, I guess now, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah,
But
roughly 2
nevertheless,
weeks.
it happened it was a story in May. And the story was that there was a gigantic net that was cast in Puerto Rico, so to speak, and they caught all these people up that were in this scheme. So, Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you because this actually, do you know about it too, Mike?
Right.
About the scheme, the Puerto Rico scheme?
I do. It wasn't a report. It was an IG report.
Oh,
an article.
that's it. That's
There was
right.
an IG report that came out that we circulated, and then. But I'll let the
Actually-
executive director take it away.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
sure,
we can
okay.
go back and forth because
Yes.
I think it's important for us to get the NVS perspective, what this means for the VA to act like the way that it did in conjunction with other law enforcement agencies, and what it really means to the veteran out there. Because we talk a lot about claim sharks, and they're doing these things. It was only one claim shark in the story. And a good portion of them were veterans, and we're not now. Let's.
oh, come on, you're
I
spoiling
know.
it. Can I?
I just want to say this though.
Let's move on.
I know. I just want to say this though, which is important. Okay, I know that we're like, yes, they got it. These people that are defrauding veterans, but we're not taking joy in the fact that veterans got caught up in the scheme. I think this is just a word to the wise that people need to understand. If you go down this road and try to defraud the government, you're gonna get caught.
Well, can we tell our listeners what
Please.
happens?
Please. I just wanted to put that out there because I don't want anybody. I mean, because we're doing a lot of laughing.
It's just setting the scene.
Well,
but it's not. It's not a great story. So to
all
speak.
right. So here's what happened on May 22nd. So just a couple weeks ago, Department of Justice put out a press release, and it basically announced the indictment of 10 people in Puerto Rico for a veterans disability fraud scheme. The interesting part of this is we've had conversations with the VA Inspector General's office over the last few years, talking about what we know, what we've observed in the Claim Shark scheme. When I first testified before the House of Representatives on this in April of 2022, we warned about this specifically. And in my testimony, I talked about one of the things that we're concerned about is the potential for medical fraud and the concern that veterans are going to be the ones who get caught up in this, and to make sure Congress was aware that this could happen. It's a bit frustrating that it took so long to get to this point. So we've been technically, Mike and I have been raising alarm bells about this since an IG report came out in 2020 about private provider DBQs, which are disability benefit questionnaires. They're forms you can bring to your doctor. They'll fill it out. It's in VA parlance so that a VA rater can look at it and be like, oh, yeah, this aligns with the rating schedule. I can rate you. So VA issued an Inspector General report back in 2020 that talked about this problem with veterans seeking DBQs from providers who would basically just say whatever they paid them to say. Fast forward the 2022 hearing, we spoke specifically about the danger for veterans. When we did the press conference later that fall, there's a picture on our social media of me holding up an Inspector General fraud alert. It's on our don'tfeedthesharks.org webpage right now. That fraud alert is on there. VA actually issued 2 of them. It's on our fact sheet about Don't Feed the Sharks, about getting caught up in this fraudulent scheme. And so here's what happened in Puerto Rico. The indictment came down. 10 people were indicted. One of them was the claim shark, just an independent claim shark, not necessarily associated with one of the larger companies that we know of, and his spouse, who was his co-conspirator. Then there was a VA employee who was working at the VA regional office in San Juan and helping to facilitate the processing of these fraudulent claims. What veterans really need to know, though, and why this indictment was so important, of those 10 indictments, 7 of them were the veteran who filed the claim. Now, you're right. We don't take joy in veterans being indicted, but this needs to serve as a stark warning that if you file a fraudulent claim, it's only a matter of time. Now, if you look at the VA Inspector General's site, usually it's one-offs, it's individuals. There's a glaring one out of Florida a few years ago where the veteran claimed he couldn't lift more than 10 pounds, but was a competitive power lifter.
Yeah, I remember that was torture.
That one's absurd. Yeah. And, seriously, thanks for ruining it for everybody else. But that's also the danger of this scheme, is that when veterans get caught up in this, or if a veteran is compelled or encouraged to embellish their disabilities, it's going to catch up with you. And, we all learned, or at least I remember from basic training, they said, look, if you owe the government money, they're going to get it.
Oh, that's for sure.
They're going to get their money. It may take a while.
Yeah.
But to me, this should serve as a stark warning.
Well, dang. I mean, Brittany was just talking about how the DoD, after they gave her severance, we're going to come back to get your and you said it was the VA, right? I'm looking around the screen because as your virtual, so I'm trying to look around the screen. But you said it was the VA that came calling, correct?
Well, yeah, it was a VA letter that it talked about, you received this amount of money, and so we're going to offset your disability pay for, I don't remember how long.
All of them.
They're like, we're going to get it back.
There's
more to it for me specifically as an individual veteran, but it's a shocking thing to
get
be hit with.
Right. So and you can understand why a veteran would, they're trying to do their best to get 100%. They always say, if I can only get to 100% T&P. Mike, can you get me there? Can you get me to 100% T&P?
It's
P&T.
It's P&T.
Thank you.
But it's the game, right?
Permanent total.
You're human. You dangle money. People are tempted.
Right.
Obviously, there are people that accept what VA gives them because it's accurate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But to Ryan's point about all this, and I think need to stress to everybody, is it's that veteran's name on that claim form. The claim shark's
Yeah.
name is not on there. That's why they're looking at that veteran. Not, aside from the fact they committed fraud.
Yeah.
And when we say that we take no joy in this, no, we don't. But if there's any joy to be taken, after years of beating the drum, there's finally been some type of action.
Yeah.
Like it's more like, hey, look, we weren't exaggerating.
Correct. We didn't make this up.
This wasn't, look at the VFW, they're just crazy. They're out there just saying outrageous things. It's like, no, we understand the laws and the regulations and what's at stake here. And we've seen how it can go awry. And also we know that when we're accredited, that we can be held accountable.
Oh,
So
that's the
if
key.
we were a party to a scheme like this, it wouldn't, it may not even necessarily be the veteran, because it would depend on how the facts played out. Because as an accredited rep, you're allowed to submit on their behalf. So, the veteran may be protected to some extent, but it would certainly be our accredited reps.
Oh, that would be in
who are
trouble.
held accountable.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, and that's why we talk about accreditation is so important, and working with an accredited representative can help you get your claim through and done accurately. But a lot of veterans are tempted to work with paid companies to, because they believe it might get done quicker, faster, get through the system, which is all lies, as we know. No one can get your claim done quicker. Only VA can process it at the rate that they can. But these companies advertise to veterans, and that can seem very attractive. However, veterans should understand that if they're unaccredited, it is you, the individual veteran, filing that claim. And if there's anything fraudulent in that claim, the veteran, you are liable. And so this is just a prime example of how the law can come down. And these decisions are...
Yeah.
And look, VA has also come a long way in this. I mean, I remember, and I think everyone in this room and Brittany has heard me talk about this before. There was a veteran who got mad at the VFW. We were their representative somehow, or they had come into one of our field offices, and we were working with them. It turns out this veteran filed a claim for mental health. The reason that they had post-traumatic stress disorder was because they were in jail after going AWOL, refusing to serve in Vietnam. Now, we didn't file a fraudulent claim. The veteran did have a mental health diagnosis. We filed it. The VA reviewed the records, everything like that. But the reason this landed on my desk, I was the NVS director at the time. This veteran was, I keep using the word veteran. This person, I should, this is the person who went AWOL.
Okay.
While serving in the military. Let me fix myself.
Yeah.
But what VA did in rendering their decision was they gave this person a roadmap to basically say, look, if you can demonstrate that your PTSD is not the result of your incarceration because of your willful misconduct, we will reconsider it. And I think, Mike, I think we both talked to the department service officer at the time about this. We're like, you did everything right. And this veteran can be mad, or this person can be mad. Not a veteran, went AWOL, willful misconduct. But this not veteran can be mad. But
Did they go AWOL in basic training?
I forget
I don't remember.
exactly. Yeah,
But
it
went
was.
AWOL.
They went AWOL, and then when they came back from Canada, they were arrested and sent to jail.
Oh, okay.
So-
Got it.
And so then they wanted to file VA benefits.
Right.
And when the facts came out, it's like no. But VA even went as far in the rating decision to say, if you can demonstrate this, you may be entitled to benefits.
So to play the devil's advocate, because there's a lot of veterans out there. We've heard it all online. We've seen it all online. We've heard people talk about it in podcasts and different things. They always say, well, it just, the VA needs to be fixed because they just make it too hard. And when you leave service, there is no handshake between the VA and the DoD. It looks like something like that has changed in recent news. And
Yes.
we are very happy, right? I don't know if you all saw that, but out there online. But
Missing memo.
it was just announced Friday. Was it on Friday?
Thursday or Friday.
Thursday or
I think
Friday
late
last
Thursday
week.
or
Yeah, I don't
early
know.
Friday.
It was in May sometimes. Let's just say that. I know.
last week.
The last week.
Last
Yeah.
week.
Right. In which there was a video in which the Sec VA and the Secretary of the DoD got together and signed a memorandum of understanding. Now, Ryan, you got a hold of that memorandum. Am I correct?
Yes,
or so to speak.
Well, yes. I mean, DoD did make it public then, but no, we reached out to VA as soon as that was signed. Because look, Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Collins got together, and they shot a video of them signing the MOU. It went online, and frankly, there are a lot of reasons that we're excited about this. When I first saw the video, I just got to say, first of all, the gesture of the Secretary of Defense going to VA central office to do this was profound. I've been working in the military transition space on the policy side since 2011. In that time, I don't think I've seen a Secretary of Defense make that kind of a gesture. It's usually the Sec VA who has to bend the knee and go to the almighty Pentagon to ask for helping service members transition. Now, the one slight exception would be about the time of the Vow to Hire Heroes Act implementation, but that was really because Department of Defense was paying $2 billion in unemployment insurance to transition service members. So that caught the attention. Secretary of Defense Hagel at the time, he's responsible for the MOU that allowed us to rapidly expand our benefits delivery at discharge program and is continuing to allow it to expand. But that was 13 years ago. Oof. That was more than a decade ago. And so since then, Brittany, you've testified on TAP. I testified on TAP just last year. Joy Craig on the legislative team testified just a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
VA has done a lot to improve transition. They have. TAP 6.0 and what we're doing on military bases right now to explain to veterans what they're entitled to, the right to competent representation, that's outstanding. VA has met the mission, and they're doing better every day. But what we consistently said is it needs DOD's engagement, and it needs senior leader engagement from DOD. Yeah. It doesn't get more senior than the sector.
Right, absolutely.
The DoD needs to be at the table. I mean, they have operational control of those service members before they earn the title of veteran. So if DoD is not participating in the process, then the VA can only do so much before they have access to that newly minted veteran. So that's why this memo is so promising, because right now there's only a sliver of service members who get this, the seamless transition to VA healthcare, for example. And that's like if you're medically retired or medically separated. Basically, and everyone else, you have to do it. You have to go to VA. You have to seek them out of your own volition and go through the process. And so I'm excited. This is something that I spoke of, like you mentioned, Ryan, I spoke about a couple of years ago in front of the House Veterans Affairs Committee. And
your social media post on it went viral because of what you said in your testimony.
Right. It really struck a nerve with a lot of people who were like, yeah, it's like this is broken. This really needs to be fixed and prioritized because, it's unfortunately a deadly gap. The initial 12 months after service, and junior enlisted service members are disproportionately impacted by that. And so this commitment from DoD and VA, like Christina said, VA's they've been doing a lot in the TAPS, in the transition space. Yes. And now it's really refreshing to see DoD come to the table, because there have been hearings where DoD, or roundtables where DoD hasn't participated.
Yeah, they haven't shown up.
And so I'm really hoping that going forward, things are going to be a little bit different with this new memo. Hopefully it's a really positive signal.
I think we buried the lead a little bit, too. The memo is specific to seamless access to care. Brittany, you spoke about it a little bit, but this is also something that our own data has shown. We've talked about it internally, and we put it in some of our testimony, too, that there's a hyper-focus on jobs with TAP, and for obvious reasons, like you want to reduce a $2 billion bill for unemployment. So that was the 50-meter target back in 2012, 2013. But as you look at what's happened in the military and veteran community, unemployment improved drastically, where veterans are consistently employed at a higher rate than their non-veteran peers. But outcomes, health outcomes like suicide, things like that, have not improved substantially. And so it left us looking at our own data thinking, look, it's not about jobs. It is about benefits but it's about benefits because it's about healthcare. That's what it's about. You're seeking benefits for a chronic health condition, which means what do you need? You need healthcare.
Right.
And so if you don't have access to that care, as Brittany said, there's going to be a gap, and that gap is what's deadly.
Yeah.
And I think when we were working on basis, or when you've traveled, and you sit down with a young service member, and you mentioned earlier, right, that's usually the first couple of things you hear. What are you going to do for work? I don't know. But what do you think my disability rate is going to be? Because I need money and I got these injuries. How do I get it taken care of? Right. So then we give them.
I'm on medication.
Right.
How does that continue when I get off of that?
Both of those answers now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like we weren't always there. It was just the mechanism weren't in place to drive them there. I mean, we've heard 1,000 times that, you got 3,000 soldiers in a unit, but only 5% get to go to TAP because of mission requirements, and then they struggle when they get out, which our data shows and government data shows.
So, Mike, let me ask you this. So, this memorandum of understanding between DoD and the VA basically closes that gap. What do you see for the future of our BDD reps that are there to help them shepherd through that process, or is it going to be automatic?
I think a little bit of both. Obviously we talked about, even in some of the hearings in March, and when we sat with the chief talking about AI and automation. VA is using automation now.
Yeah.
So let's get the simple stuff, the low-hanging fruit done, and for the more complex issues, then you come see us, and we get you through those issues.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a combination of automation and still the need to sit across from an accredited representative and navigate the process of VA and what that means in your transition within those first 12 months.
Right. So do you think, and Christina, let me ask you this, do you think now that this MOU is out, that, the TAP Promotion Act is going to be something where people are like, we don't need that anymore? Or what's your focus now? Is it renews, is it shifted, or are you still going full speed ahead on it?
I mean, VFW is still going full speed ahead on it. Congressman Van Orden, who's a former Navy SEAL, is one who introduced the bill. So even he strongly understands how important the transition process is, and for us to be on those installations to facilitate that transition. He personally has told us that he's had service members that he knew personally commit suicide after they got out. And so we're not slowing down with this. We're grateful that VA has incorporated accredited representatives in their current TAP 6.0, so that's fantastic. That was in large part for the VFW pushing that. And so they've already instituted that as part of their TAP program. However, we want to codify that so that's permanent going forward. And this partnership, I think, is a positive signal in that direction, that these things are going to continue, and hopefully that DoD and VA are going to strengthen those ties and kind of fill the gaps that we've been identifying, connections in the community, making sure that veterans have additional resources even outside of VA.
Yeah.
And DoD can help facilitate some of that.
That's great. That's great. And I think it's just a sign that they're listening to the veteran community is such a huge step.
They are part of the veteran
Oh, yeah, both of them are.
community. And so that there is an incredible value that they've served, and that they're in these roles, and that they know folks who have struggled through their transition. And so that is incredibly important, and I think it speaks to their dedication to this issue.
Right. Ryan, your thoughts?
What I was going to add to that too is the reason the TAP Promotion Act is so important is because even if you have all of the right MOUs in place, we know that you can't be everywhere at once. And in the way that the TAP program is administered right now, even on the DoD and VA side, is hub and spoke. So some smaller outlying installations don't always have assistance from government personnel or the appropriate contracted personnel. And it will be the VSO who has to cover down on that. A great example is Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, where the transition assistance folks, they go out there periodically. There aren't many airmen stationed there, but right next door to the Air Force Base in Great Falls, there's a state service office. And the service officers who are VFW accredited out of there, they can provide service to the airmen when they need it. Right. So there may not be someone there who can help facilitate that transition all the time, but right down the street is a Montana Department of Veterans Affairs person with a VFW accreditation that can walk them through that process. Right. So everybody plays a role in this, which is what we've also asked for years, about leaning on your community partners, your accredited advocates who have the training and the resources to responsibly serve the active duty of the transitioning community.
Yeah.
Right.
Excellent. So what else do we have on the list there, Ryan? I think these are we've exhausted a lot of the topics here so far.
Well, we had politics more generally, and Brittany hit on this one a little bit. But so all of this is to say, our job here is to call balls and strikes as an organization. And it was funny when we posted the video from VA, it's common. Don't read the comments. And I'm sure someone's going to put some comments on here, whether they're about my face or something else. I don't know. The mustache,
There's always going to
right?
be comments, Ryan.
There's always going to be comments. But it's, I feel good about the comments we got, because what it tells me is that we're doing our jobs effectively. We're calling balls and strikes for what we see. We received criticism for Commander-in-Chief Lipphardt's statement about cuts at VA back in March. Accusing us of being aligned one way politically. And now that we're praising Secretary Collins and Secretary Hegseth for advancing one of our priorities, like TAP has been a priority of ours forever.
Right.
Very long time.
A very, very, very long time. Now we're being accused of aligning with the other political party. It's like, so we must be doing it right then. We're doing it correctly. We're advocating for veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, Brittany, you and I have seen this on social media. And I've gotten
Everything
phone
you
calls.
do is wrong, Rob.
I know. Everything I do is wrong. Like, I've gotten phone calls where there was this one lady I remember. She goes, what are you, some woke liberal shill out there? And then another person who called me was like, yeah, I bet you're, one of these MAGA far right guys.
I don't know. Which one am I?
I don't know.
Can I be both at the same time? I'm a veterans advocate. I don't know.
I am not even affiliated with a party. I don't know where you guys are getting with.
I am here discharging the resolutions of the members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States.
Exactly.
That's what I say. I often say, hey, the VFW hired me to do a job. Whatever they asked me to write, I'm writing. So that's the way that goes.
So you all make me so glad I do not have social media.
Oh, come on. You were
Sometimes you're
Mr.
better off,
LinkedIn
Mike.
there for like 10 minutes.
That was. I still use it on occasion, but even then I won't read the comments. It just drives me blood pressure up.
What about you, Brittany?
This is good. I'm glad that we're talking about this, because the reality is we are a resolutions-driven organization. Our members vote on our members vote on resolutions. They tell us what they want us to advocate on. Every year at our convention, our members from all over the world come and they sit in their committees and they're like, this is what we care about for the next year. And those are our marching orders. Those are the marching orders of the organization. And so Ryan mentioned we call balls and strikes. And so that's regardless of how the issue is falling, like what side of the spectrum or what part of the spectrum it might fall on any given day. It's not, we're nonpartisan. And so if something the administration does, that's regardless of which administration it is, if it's something they do something that we're aligned with, great. If they do something that our resolutions are not aligned with, then we speak about it. We bring it up, because that's what our resolutions have charged us to do. And so it's a really challenging space to operate in, because to Rob's point, we're neither, like, it is possible to just be reasonable and have and it falls somewhere in the middle, or just abstain, I guess, and just be true to our organization's resolutions and values. And so that's what we do every day. We do our best to maintain the integrity of the organization and what we're charged with carrying out by our members, and that's it. That's where we are.
I mean, I do want to beat this analogy into the ground, because Mike, you have experience as a professional baseball umpire. Is it calling balls and strikes? Everybody loves the umpire, right?
Until they don't.
Until they don't.
Until they become the show where they impact the game in a negative way. Not that that's ever happened. Back to you.
All I think of is Leslie Nielsen from
No,
The Naked
it was never
Gun.
like that.
Sorry.
Cut that from the edit.
That was
It's
that
gonna look better on
should have been.
YouTube.
That probably should have been the good in the order.
Podcast, they're listening to the podcast. They're like, "What was that sound?" Don't even understand what that was all
Is there a
about.
fly by the microphone?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Oh, I wasn't
Fly.
the one who heard that.
So here we are. We've talked a little politics. We have a little, I think
Did we talk about the Grand Ole Opry, or do we?
well, we
save
can.
that?
I think we can.
That's
You know,
right.
the thing is that we do things on behalf of the organization. We go to different places, and I think that's fitting. Actually, it's a great place to go. And in our conversation is talking about Mike going to. Now, are you a big country fan, Mike?
I like older country. So,
Okay.
yeah, my dad liked country
You were
music.
country
When
before.
country wasn't cool.
There you go. I knew you were going to get that.
He likes both kinds of music, country
and
and
Western. He sure did. So tell us about your trip.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go with the Commander Chief and the National Chief of Staff and their spouses, Hal Roche, the Executive Director of the Foundation, Tony Lowe, to the Grand Ole Opry for salute to troops during Memorial Day week as we geared up for Memorial Day here in D.C. at the invitation of one of our big sponsors, Humana and USAA.
Okay.
Al was given an award for our association, our relationship by USAA, which should be arriving here at the office at some point. But he asked it to be put on the desk in the Commander in Chief's office next door,
Yes.
which is a positive symbol of our relationship. The interesting thing about it was, and I don't know if you know much about the Opry. I've worn this over the years. They have to do a number of shows each year, if you remember.
Okay.
You have to meet that, or you get kicked out of the Opry or something. There's a penalty or whatever. So it didn't feel by those country artists that were there that they were obligated to be there. They wanted to be there. And as we did the little march around, because Al led the parade with the honor guard from the Army and the 100th Army Band, they were walking off the carpet to talk to us, to shake our hands
Oh.
and say thank you for our services. We thanked them. One of the artists was Sal Gonzalez, who I understand is like Pat, a below-the-knee amputee and a Marine. And he brought the house down with his music and talking about his commitment and how it related to not only his recovery, but how he's able to give back. Craig Morgan, another
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
another 10 or 16-year veteran of service.
That's right.
But it was everybody that wanted to be there. Great day to showcase veterans, and can't thank Humana and USA enough for the invite and letting Al and the VFW lead that parade.
Great partners of ours. I mean, Humana does so much, and we're talking about national. In the office here, we've been talking about National Convention coming up, and they're one of our two biggest sponsors that are there at the exhibit hall is Humana and USAA. All the things like even giving money over towards our training for our accredited service representatives.
Training, yeah.
And that's huge.
Scholarship program with Humana.
Scholarship programs. So yeah, even though this is a commercial, not really a commercial, right, for our sponsors.
Just a thank you to our sponsors.
Yeah, it's just a
thank
thank you.
you.
We want to thank our sponsors. So good trip. Anything that stood out in your mind, like, ooh, man, I'm gonna treasure this forever, other than being at the Grand Ole Opry.
Did you get to step into the circle?
We
and
did not,
sing?
but we were able to go backstage. And we got a nice tour backstage, and the artists, while they were getting ready for their performances, were out in the hallway just talking to people. It wasn't a dog and pony show. It wasn't like, okay, I've got to be here. It's a contractual obligation.
Wow.
They really wanted to be there. So and then to see the history of the Opry, it's kind of like the Pentagon. Unless you're in the Pentagon, you don't get to see all those displays.
Oh, yeah, right.
There's all kinds of memorabilia there, and everybody's name. They said when you walk in the door, the plaques of the current members and past are on the left-hand side. And they said Darius Rucker, every time he gets in there, rubs his plaque because he can't believe that he's a member of the Opry.
Yeah.
And now it's almost illegible.
He's rubbed it so much. I'm a big Darius Ruck fan. I'll even be with you. All right, so here we are at the end of our little bit. Let me put you in the picture there. Brittany,
Rob.
so really great that you're able to join us. This is going to be something we're going to do from now on, is have her on virtually within the program, coming on with these different things, live from New York or live from Rhode Island or wherever you are. I guess we can
Who knows?
bring you in. So that's kind of great to be up there in the Northeast. And that's the home for the four of us here in the room, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. So kind of cool. So another thing that's cool, good of the order, we're going to go around the room here. And I want to let's start at the opposite end. Let's start with Ryan, because what's up with this mustache that you have going on? And
Great.
And I know I'm the one with the hair, but that's right. Mike with the hair too. But you've been up to something, and what is it?
I don't
You
know
need to
what
tell
you're
us.
talking about. I need to tell you? No.
Yes.
All right. So, trying to think of how to frame this. So obviously this looks a little bit different, and not just because my face is half paralyzed, but let me tell you a little bit of a backstory here. I have to give it to our past legislative director, Pat Murray, for giving me this idea, because Pat was always saying I was traveling too much, so I needed a way to stay closer to home and be in the office more, which I'm very glad I did. But so let me back up. Back in 2020, living in Annapolis, found a small community theater called Annapolis Summer Garden Theater. Katie and I went to a couple shows there. It's a great place to see a show. It's right on the water. It's downtown. It's an all-volunteer thing. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I should try doing that someday. They were putting on Rock of Ages in 2020. I decided to go in both feet, dive right into this whole process, auditioned, got cast in a role for that show. It got put on hold for COVID. But fast forward, they came back. They did a variety show. I got invited to do that in 2021. In 2022, Rock of Ages went off. It happened. It was great. It was a ton of fun.
I can attest because I went to go see it.
Yeah, you got to see opening
And I
night.
sat there with my wife in the rain watching you perform. It was wonderful.
I just got rained out.
As Stacey Jack singing Bon Jovi songs, which is great. Mike knows I like to sing 70s and 80s songs. When it comes to karaoke, we're always doing Sweet Caroline or another classic standard, and then I'll belt out some Motley Crue. So then fast forward to this year, and looking at my schedule, it looked like I didn't have much planned travel. And the director who did Rock of Ages was doing another jukebox musical called Disaster, this time to 70s themed things. So both the director was asking me like, hey, you got to audition for this. I approached Katie, I approached Dan West, our adjutant general. I'm like, hey, can I do this? And they're like, yeah, give it a shot, whatever. Well, Katie was more encouraging. Dan was encouraging too. But so I sent in an audition video while you're Rob. While
Rob.
Brad and Brad Hazel and I were in Belgium. Got a call back, got cast to be the sleazy casino cruise director. Then my face broke. And I'm like, am I going to be able to do this? But fortunately, it works with the character. But I also committed, you know what, I'm going all in on this. I'm growing the hair out, slicking it back, got the mustache, going, if I'm not going 1,000 miles an hour, I'm not going at all. And so the show started, it opened Memorial Day weekend. It runs through Flag Day, the Army birthday, the 250th Army birthday.
Yes.
June 14th is our final show.
Thank you.
Again, it's Annapolis Summer Garden Theater in Annapolis, Maryland, right on the water across the street from the Fleet Reserve. Shout out to our partners from the Fleet Reserve Association. You guys are great. You're always great to our service officers when they're in town. So it's just a ton of fun. Get to be outside under the stars and belt out 70s songs in a legitimate environment, sort of.
I'm a little hurt
in bell bottoms.
I'm a little hurt that you didn't ask me to audition because you did for Rock of Ages, and I was busy at the time, and then I tried to get my son to do it. He was 23 at the time. He was fresh out of high school. He could have done it, but then he was like, I don't know if that's my scene, Dad. And I would have definitely done it, that's for sure. And then the 70s, look, I already have the hair, my yacht rock hair and beard. This is what's going on with this. Everybody asks me why, and that's it. So, okay, well, good on you for getting out there and doing something fun. Christina, what do you have?
What do I have?
For the good of the order.
For the good of the order, honestly, my mind is very focused on National Convention.
Oh.
I would say I'm really excited
Okay.
about that. We are still trying to come up with costumes for the patriotic rally.
Great. I was going to ask, the National Convention,
it's gonna be
what's the idea for the patriotic rally?
We've been bouncing around ideas, but TBD. It's going to be in Columbus, Ohio this year. We're just trying to think of something that would work well. But
Does it go with the 125th anniversary?
It could be. VFW was started there, so maybe we could do
Some
could all dress
historic-
like
something
they
historic.
were that
Yeah,
year.
but doing the Macy's Day Parade thing.
Oh my goodness, that's
Wow,
right. I don't know
okay.
if I mentioned. Did I mention this to you?
Oh,
That
no.
was not the time.
Okay, that
It
was not
could be the time. It's going to go to the order.
Okay, yeah, it's on my turn for good of the order, so maybe we'll just leave that there. But so good. So that's something that you're thinking on behalf of the office.
Yeah, definitely. It's just fun for the staff to get involved, and as a VFW, I mean, we're all VFW members, but just to see all the departments come in. Mine is from Europe, so just to see those guys come in, and it's just kind of fun for us to get together and join some of the festivities as well.
That's awesome.
Have we ever done viewer submissions? Like, Brittany, can we do a poll for people to submit ideas?
Oh my gosh, that would be great.
We totally can.
Yeah.
I think we should workshop that.
Yeah, let's
Sounds good.
let's workshop
I'm on
it.
board.
All right.
Get the sand table.
Figlioli, what do you have?
Sand table. Oh yeah. Thanks to the executive director cutting down on his travel. I've picked up some of it.
I don't know what you're talking about. You got to go to the Opry. You just said how great it was.
I did. I'm not bitching. Not complaining. Headed off to my department convention the end of this week, so I'll be in Massachusetts. Carol will be there as the national rep. Get back on Sunday. Monday, leave for our BDD site in Fort Riley with our executive director, Greg Orto. Make a site visit there. And then
Wait, did Greg get promoted? Something I don't know about?
deputy director?
You said executive director.
That's okay.
Hey, wait a minute.
The lights are hot in here.
Yeah.
And then that's followed up by being the rep to the Department of Rhode Island convention. I think you're off to a convention as well.
Yeah, Vermont on Thursday, heading up for their convention.
Did you get a call last night from the adjutant? He said he had to call you.
No, but I talked to the legislative folks there, so we're on track.
All right. And that's good. I don't really have anything for the good of the order, honestly. One of the ideas, I'm going to bring Brittany on the screen here. Brittany, I'm bringing you on because one of the ideas that we had for the patriotic rally, which would be really awesome, is
We need all your cameras.
right. We have Brittany and I, if we're off to the side doing a Macy's Day Parade analysis of everybody coming through in the patriotic rally. Now we'll get the information like beforehand, right? So, what the Department of Rhode Island's doing, what the Department of South Dakota's doing, and the Department of California, and what they're wearing and who they're wearing, right? That
I'm
kind of
thing
thing.
Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir. All right,
Well,
like
it
the
could be very
Kentucky
much
Derby or
I
the
can't
Olympics.
promise that I will be as fashionable, good word, as you would Johnny Weir, but that's for sure.
Not with that kind of attitude.
Well, so what do you say, Brittany? You think we should do that?
I would love to do that. It was like the inaugural, commentary. I'm there for it. I'm on board.
Yes.
I like
Okay.
it.
So
That was
you
an
heard
easy
it here
sell.
first. Of course, we got to get somebody to approve that. I got
we
Brian's
do. We
approval,
probably
but
do.
we'll have to see
How far up the chain
who
does that need to
manages
go?
all these things for the national convention. We're
Well,
still
we
trying to
have the
figure that out.
equipment.
Yeah, right.
Just come on.
Yeah, just set up and
Just do it.
talk about what you see.
Yeah, that would be.
And we'll talk to Randy about just making sure we can stream it. I think
Oh
that's what
man,
we need.
if
That would
that
be
gets
super
streamed,
We'll use the
Cool.
press riser.
oh yeah, that would be great. And we just have the shot behind us. Okay, these are great ideas. I tell
love
you
it.
what, that would be
Love it.
hilarious. For those that don't get to go to the national convention, you can have the jocularity between myself and Brittany up there on the riser, and it will be fantastic. So anyway, that's it for the good of the order.
Does Brittany have anything for
Brittany,
the good of the order?
yes, I'm sorry. How dare I? Brittany, what do you got for the good of the order?
I'm just stoked to be back, frankly. So, this is my first time back on the podcast in like 3 months or something like that.
Yeah, it's
so,
been a while, man.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. Now we have 5. Now we have room for 5 people on the podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for what the future holds. And who knows where I'll pop up while we're podcasting. So
Will we see baby
TBD.
Finn show up every once in a while?
you may see him make an appearance.
Love it.
Finnegan, yeah,
You might,
he's
Rabbit, you
busy.
might.
He has a really packed schedule these days as a 11-week-old. He's not quite 3 months, but he's close. So
Time
he
flies.
was mulching. He was mulching yesterday with his grandmother. Today, who knows what he's off doing? So I'll have to make sure that his schedule is clear next.
He's
for the next
already mulching?
I
You
think
guys
in
are putting him to work.
In the tradition of a VFW family, when are you bringing him to a post like Mike when he was a baby?
Oh, yes.
during our
get him.
next post meeting,
What was that? Say
Yes.
again?
he will be attending. Yes, he'll be growing up in VFW
Just
just
a
like
diaper bag.
Mike.
I'll take him with me.
Yes,
That'd be awesome. He likes
yes,
the
and
babies.
so TBD, we'll see.
TBD, we'll see. I love it.
TBD, we'll
Brittany.
see. And Mike, if you
Awesome.
need communication support while you're in the Rhode Island convention, let me know.
Yes, I will.
Okay, very good.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
All right. So anyway, with that, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye for now. And for those, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, on social media, and whatever your podcast platform may be. And just remember, when it comes to the VFW, we are still serving. From Washington, D.C., I'm Rob Couture. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Still Serving, the VFW podcast. To get the latest news and information from the veterans of foreign wars, make sure to follow, like, and subscribe to us on social media at VFW HQ, on Facebook at VFW Fans, or visit our website at vfw.org.